Thank you. I'm an artist, and I'm learning to embrace that leadership title. My medium is mosaic. Within that specialized medium, I choose to work with local stone from my native southwestern Pennsylvania. This puts me into a very slender niche of art makers. I hunt and forage for stone. I chop it up into really small pieces with my hammers, and then I put it all back together again in ways that make sense to me. That's a very simple way to describe a sometimes laboriously slow and complex way of making art. I create relationships with my stone, and those relationships translate into helping others to connect with the earth beneath their feet. So when I refer to the Marcellus Conversation, there are two distinct meanings to that. There's the conversation that's jabbering away out there in the media and the town halls and around the dinner tables, and then there's the conversation that I'm having directly with the shale itself. The idea of the pipeline traveling deep into the Marcellus bed was the catalyst that first directed my imagination down into the earth. I realized that the nature of stratigraphy could supply me with this wealth of artistic imagery. When I was hit by this thunderbolt of an idea, I immediately called my dad, and I asked him pointedly, "Dad, can you list the layers of earth right here under the farm?" I'll always remember at how impressed I was at how immediately he rattled off those layers to me accurately. And I rushed to get them all written down on my work table with a Sharpie, and that was the birth of what has become a very powerful body of work, the Mighty Marcellus series. So by building cutaway slices of the Earth's layers out of the Earth itself, I'm able to communicate about a contemporary issue in a very accessible format. This image gives you a mole's eye view of what the heck everyone's getting so excited about. I'm proud of being able to help regular people imagine what it might be like down there. When I say regular people, I mean non-geologists, non-gas industry people. I think most of us struggle with the mysterious nature of the drilling and fracking process. It happens so far below us, 8,000 feet. That's like a mile and a half. It's hard to get your head around that. I think many of us have seen maybe the cutaway images online, possibly, but there's something visceral and immediate about standing in front of one of these mosaics, being able to touch it, that gives the viewer more power over the whole idea somehow. You may wonder at my use of the term mole's eye view. From what it looks like here, this guy doesn't even have eyes, right? Actually, moles do have eyes. They're just very small and they don't use them. They use all of their other senses, which is why I use him as my example. Obviously, he doesn't live deep enough to be burrowing through the Marcellus, but he's down there, tunneling and exploring and creating open spaces. He's like his own little organic drilling machine. You could say he's his own his own special brand of miner. And by using all of his other senses, I compare him to a person who works in mosaic. With mosaic, all of the senses are engaged. You hear the tapping of the hammer, the splitting of the stones. You feel the textures, the hardness, the edges. Sometimes you can smell the sulfur or the mineralness as a rock breaks open. A bit of a stretch, but honestly, I can sometimes feel like a mole hidden away in my studio for long stretches of time. And I can't help but think about the little mole again when I look at this lineup of images, the drill sinking and exploring through the layers. Of course, it lacks the mole's sensitivity and awareness to its surroundings, the nature of industry being that it is oblivious to the impact on the environment around it. As I said, my particular approach to mosaic is singular, even within the narrow window of that medium. I use ancient traditional tools and techniques, cutting with a hammer and hardy. So yes, I actually do cut each tiny piece into just the shape I want. I think about where it traveled from in geologic time, why its specific shade is slightly darker than its neighbor, how it cuts with the hammer, and once in a while, even how it tastes. I have been known to lick a rock or two. I see it as an honor to witness that unveiling, that transformation from humble junk rock into squared up tessera. So speaking of humble junk rock. This is a piece of Marcellus right here. But this is a rock that it is actually a stone right here from outside, right in Kenyon College, that I picked up this morning. So I'm just going to give you a couple cuts so you can hear. This is a very meditative process for me. And the magic happens with this anonymous stone. You cut into it and you see little bits of quartz and different shades, and you lay it next to another stone that's different, and it makes its individuality stand out even more. So if any of you have read Michael Pollan's An Omnivore's Dilemma, one of the most memorable parts of it for me was the visit to Polyface Farm in Virginia. So the unique style of this farm let every animal do what it was meant to do. The farmer had created this progressive, movable fencing, so the cows could graze to their heart's content, and then after they'd moved on to another field, the chickens would follow after them, scratching up the soil while eating the bugs from the cow's manure. So it all worked for the farm's productivity. But the point I'm making is that the chickens were encouraged to do chicken things, the cows encouraged to do cow things, etc. And I like to think of my rocks that way. Instead of forcing them to do what I may want, I enjoy watching what comes naturally to them. For me, the earthy quality, the matte surfaces, the quietness of natural stone is kind of a solution to too much stimulus. Getting out into nature, often in a solitary way, and sifting through the earth, which is how I like to think of it, sifting through the earth, has transformed me from an amateur mosaicist into a professional artist. And by that, I mean a person who has committed to working at art every day. I find that mass-produced, pre-cut, ready-made mosaic material holds no interest for me. Again, it's all about building that relationship. And I do that by starting the relationship with stone or glass or metal or wood or plastic or whatever in its raw state. Speaking of raw states, mosaic artists are an odd bunch. We see the world in pieces, and some of us go to great lengths to create those pieces. You could say that nothing is safe around me and my hammers. This year, I got really angry at my non-functional Epsom HP printer and turned it from this into this. I'm not giving you an explanation of the story behind that one today because I'm focusing on my work that comes directly from the earth, but it was a good story. As an artist, I know that I'm fortunate to have found tools that help me to work out my problems, both my everyday problems and my larger-than-life problems. When I'm in the studio or out in the world being hit with a new idea or concept, I have this physical outlet that I can use to communicate. Sometimes that's literally banging stuff with hammers. Art has given me a place in the world. My places are the city of Pittsburgh and the mountains and valleys of Appalachia. Where I'm from, these two places overlap and intertwine with each other, and I've been able to make specific connections between these two very opposing influences. Where some people see destruction, I see beauty in the spaces where nature and industry meet. Often, those spaces have everything to do with the idea of time. Geologic time so effectively dwarfs our human time spans. So by building an image of time with a capital T, I'm able to place myself in this short time I have on the planet. These touchable, organic images are extremely accessible to the human brain and sensibility. And my hope is that they can help others to see their place in the larger-than-life dramas that are playing out for this generation, whether they be landowners in the midst of intense change, people in and around the gas industry itself, or those who are questioning the wisdom of invading the earth beneath us. I feel strongly that this art is available to all of us. This is Jeff Sager, my dad, after a day at the mines. Because of him, I grew up with a direct understanding of what the earth can provide, whether through fossil fuel or farming. He's always been very aware of what's under his feet. I think that's a big part of why I feel compelled to dig into the earth now to make it work for me in these ways. My dad was unemployed for a few years in the 80s, between the time that his small coal company went out of business and when he eventually reinvented himself as a contractor who crushed rock. During this strange time for our family, I can remember him walking the cornfields back and forth, hunting for Native American arrowheads and tools. He spent a few years obsessively combing our property and covering my mom's kitchen countertops with often rocks, actually. Sometimes he would see a lot more into a piece of stone than there actually was. But when I think back, I can see so clearly the light in his eyes when he would picture a story behind a particular piece of flint or sandstone. And he would take his finds to the Archaeological Society meetings. He has a story how a professor told him once very seriously, "Well, Mr. Sager, what you have there is a leverite." And my dad got very excited and he asked in a hushed voice, "Well, what is that?" And the professor responded, "You leave her right where you found her." So as I get deeper into this art, I'm realizing that my stories are very wrapped up in my dad's stories. Geology is destiny. It seems every generation has its own story to tell. And today, our own very timely and meaningful example of geology as destiny is the Marcellus Shale phenomenon. The Marcellus bed was created 390 million years ago in the Upper Devonian period and has become a part of our destiny today because of the massive amount of plant life that got trapped down there and was eventually transformed into natural gas. That's my 5-second geology lesson. Gross oversimplification. But I imagine you Ohioans are becoming familiar with the term Utica. Utica being the deeper shale bed below the Marcellus, very common in this state. So the Marcellus is so rich in fossil fuel that it actually smells like petroleum when you hammer it open. I was lucky enough to score a big pile of it from a drilling company that had core samples left over. So what you see here actually came from 8,000 feet below ground. And if you notice, the layers on the right look very natural, like maybe I've just taken a photo from an outcropping, but that's a complete creation from the studio. Each piece has been delicately hammered down and nestled neatly next to its neighbor. I've mentioned a few times now about building relationships with stone. By the time a stone ends up tucked into one of my compositions, I've interacted with it a dozen different ways. I've discovered it and plied it from the earth. I've brought it home. I've washed it. I've categorized it. I've cut it multiple times. And after ruminating on it, appreciating it, feeling it, I've placed it carefully just where I want it. I also use maps as templates to communicate ideas. Cartography is a powerful tool with its symbology, its legends and keys. It helps me to tell stories and connect the past to the future. What better phrase to describe this new industry we find ourselves contemplating than terra incognita, unknown land? Because in the end, none of us really knows how this will all play out. And by the way, the piece on the far side is titled, "Here Be Dragons." A world divided. This abstracted well image is where I myself often stand on the issue of gas extraction and fracking. I sometimes picture my place in this phenomenon as straddling two sides of a giant chasm, trying to keep my balance. Many branches of my family are benefiting both directly and indirectly from the Marcellus economy, myself included. From the moment I started creating these images, I felt a kind of panic about being controversial from either viewpoint. I feared the drama, but found that I was plopping myself right in the middle of it. So I am quite aware, finally, of the irony. Taking a line from a great Victoria Williams song, "That which you fear the most could meet you halfway." So as a landowner, as an artist, as a woman who loves her family, as an appreciator of unspoiled nature and my beloved Pennsylvania farmland, I find that I am full of contradictions. But slowly, through building these relationships with the shale itself, I'm finding a peace in the process and learning to embrace this controversy inside myself. Whether that's turning my rage at the printer into a constructive experiment, or working through my angst and conflict in the Marcellus Conversation, I use art to make sense of my life. I am an artist, not a geologist, not a politician, not an activist. I don't know what a future of natural gas industry means for this pocket of our country. I don't have statistics about water quality, pollution, energy independence, or economic stability. My job is to create art that inspires the conversation and helps us, all of us, to answer big questions about what it means to be human on this smaller all-the-time planet. So, I do not set out trying to be a leader, but it turns out that my art has become very meaningful to the people who live amidst this grappling of nature and industry that is the Marcellus Shale phenomenon. Thank you.